Hi, this is Dr. Jim Critchlow, and I'm going to talk about the basics of Biblical Greek, and specifically chapters 19 to 25. Now, I've already done two videos, one on chapters 1 through 8 or 9, and one on chapters 10 through 18. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to pick up the future through the perfect tenses so that you can fully understand, at least for final exam purposes, what you need to know. Now, I have tabbed my book, and I recommend you do something similar that will help you find the chapters in a hurry and know what is important in each of the chapters. Now, starting in chapter 19, with the future, I begin on page 158, and I'm going to point out that 19.4, 5, and 6 are all important. In 19.4, it talks about all 6 forms of a verb, the lexicon and how it lists those forms, and then what the tense stem is. All of this material is important for you to learn for the future. The future of me is in 19.24 on page 163. Any tense that lists me, present, future, imperfect, and once we get to other forms and participles, you must memorize me. It only becomes helpful if you know it when you see it. On pages 168 and 169, the discussion about verbal roots and tense stems becomes very important. You have to understand in concept how the patterns work, the roots and stems, and these definitions. All of that material through the end of page 169 is important for you to know. Now, some specifics about the future. In 20.7, we've got a pattern showing some of the different roots. There are verb forms that have completely different roots. For instance, erchomai and eliusomai in the future. They come from a different root. The same thing with lego and aro, or horao and opsomai. They do come from different roots. So I've found it easiest to memorize those different root forms. Now, the regular liquid futures have some difficulties with them, but once you see how they're built and you recognize the liquid, the root ends in a lambda, mu, nu, or rho, and the tense formative, instead of being a sigma, the normal tense formative for the future, is epsilon sigma. On pages 172 and 173, the future active, middle indicative, and its chart and the paradigm, and then why it goes through these changes. This is important. You see the explanation at the top of page 173. On page 174, Dr. Mounts asks the question whether we should highlight the patterns and memorize the patterns, or highlight the roots and memorize the forms in each case. I've adopted a middle ground procedure where I look at the patterns, remember how the patterns work, but I memorize those words that have different roots in the future and other tenses, such as erchomai, balo, lambano, ami. Now, that's why I've assigned different verbs to different students in the class. Once you get assigned a verb, you need to become expert in that verb so that you can help the rest of the class recognize them when they show up. Now, before we dive into the imperfect tense, there's a great overview on pages 180 and 181. The imperfect is the first of the augmented tenses. We'll study the imperfect, second aorist, and the first aorist. The augment indicates that Greek wants you to know that these are operating in past time. Only augmented tenses operate in past time, so it's imperfect and aorist. The future is not augmented, nor is the present or the perfect. Everything in this chapter gives you an overview of what we're going to do in chapters 21 to 25. Chapter 21 is the imperfect tense built on the present tense stem. Chapter 22 is the second aorist. Chapter 23 is the first aorist. And chapter 24 is the aorist passive and the future passives, and chapter 25 is the perfect. Now this is where we're going down this pathway. Here's chapter 21, the imperfect. For those of you in my fall Boston basic Greek class, this is the last chapter you'll need to know before the final exam. On page 183, 21.3, talking about this augment and the secondary endings, both active and passive. We hadn't learned these up through this chapter, but now we're going to add this to your understanding. On pages 184 and 185, we're going to talk about the imperfect, middle, and passive. 21.6 shows the chart. 21.7 shows the paradigm for the imperfect active. 21.8 shows the imperfect middle passive. And 21.9 shows the paradigm. Now we'll go through this into each one of the chapters: imperfect, second and first aorist, and the futures, as well as perfect. On page 187, take a good look at this master personal ending chart, particularly the secondary tense endings. We have already seen the primary active and middle: luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueta, luusen, and the middle passive: luomai, lue, luetai, luametha, luestha, luantai. And the endings: nothing, sigma nu, nothing, sigma iota, mente, nisi. In the middle passive: mai, psi, tai, metha, sthe, untai. In the secondary, we're going to have to learn these new endings, both active and middle passive. Nu, sigma, nothing, mente, nu. Both the first singular and the third plural are new, but you can tell by context which one it is. And in the secondary tenses, middle passive forms: main, sa, ta, metha, sthe, nta. They're not that different than the primary, mai, psi, tai. These are main, sa, ta. So there are many similarities. You should be able to figure these out pretty quickly. They are from memory. On page 190, 21.23, the imperfect of a me. Again, anytime you see a me in a paradigm, you need to memorize it. Page 197 and 196, 22.5 talks about the second aorist. Here's the chart, there's the paradigm in 22.6. And then additionally, 22.14 shows the paradigm for the second aorist middle. And on the next tab is on page 199, the paradigm at 22.15 for the second aorist middle indicative. I also would call your attention to page 199, the master verb chart. This is starting to build towards the culmination once we get through participles, but there's a great deal of information in here. You should be able to recognize what's going on with each of the verbs. Now let's turn over to the first aorist chapter, 23. We're on page 204 and 205. The first aorist active chart is in 23.4, and 23.5 is the paradigm. The first aorist is very regular. It's the strong verb. It should not cause you as many problems as the second aorist. In 23.13 on page 207, you'll see the first aorist liquids. Just like we studied in the futures, any verb ending in lambda, mu, nu, or rho is a liquid, and you'll see some other indications when you see the paradigm at 23.14. It uses the present tense form meno, and it becomes emena, emenas, emenen, emenamen, emenata, and emenon. I had a little trouble just getting it going because it's too early in the morning. On page 208, we have both the chart and the paradigm in 23.17 and 23.18. On page 213, we're going to talk about the first aorist passive. The chart is on 24.4, page 213, and the paradigm is on the next page. 24.11 brings up the second aorist passive, the chart and the paradigm. On pages 216 and 217, we have the first and second future passives. This is future forms that are formed from an aorist root, and their tense formative is theta, eta, sigma. On pages 224 and 225, 25.4 shows the chart, and 25.5 shows the paradigm for the perfect active. On pages 228 and 229, 25.15 talks about the middle voice, the indirect middle, and 25.17 the reflexive, deponent middle, and parsing. This material fleshes out what you know about the middle. So far we've only learned middles being deponent, but there are several as we go further that are not. The last tab that I wanted to show you is on pages 230 to 31, the master verb chart, and that starts on the bottom of 230 and ends up on the top of 231, and the summary of the perfect tense. Congratulations! Once you get through chapter 25, you've covered the entire indicative form. You're doing very well. If you have any questions, give me a call at 603-978-8991. May God bless you in your study of His holy language of the New Testament.